Well, it's official. I feel like console gaming is dying. We had news from Sony last year about the PS5 Pro and its very disappointing reveal. We had news earlier this year about Nintendo Switch 2 and its disappointing reveal. And a few days ago, we had information from Xbox basically saying that they are going to raise the prices of literally everything. But starting things off with Sony, the PlayStation 5 Pro was a console that didn't include the disc tray and it didn't include the vertical stand by default, but it still cost you $700, meaning that you were paying $700 minimum, keep in mind, because obviously due to exchange rates you were paying far more than that in countries outside of America. $700 minimum for a PlayStation 5 Pro. If you're a person that really enjoys physical gaming and, owning your games, you basically have to shell out an additional like $70 or what have you just to play your games on the new console, which might not have been so bad if you were actually getting a pretty sizable upgrade over the PlayStation 5. However, it was pointed out that this really isn't the case. With the PlayStation 5 Pro and its fidelity graphics setting, it was pointed out that in order to achieve 60 FPS on the thing, the graphics were actually having to be reduced in certain cases, with some games being played at 860p on the PlayStation 5 Pro. The games are that fucking demanding that you can't even guarantee 1080p 60 FPS on the world's most expensive console. And hilariously enough, several articles came out basically saying that you're not guaranteed 60 FPS at all on the PlayStation 5 Pro, meaning that you're spending like $700 or the equivalent of that in whatever currency you have in your country for 30 to 60 FPS all over again. With Sony then digging their own grave further by increasing the amount of money it costs for PlayStation Plus in Canada, meaning that if you live in Canada and you're a PlayStation gamer, you now have to spend like $100 or the equivalent of that just to pay to play your games online. And if you want like the additional benefits to being scammed by Sony, the additional benefits of being forced to pay to play your own games online, if you want like the free games a month that come with your subscription, you're being forced to pay way more than $100 a month. So prices are going up for the console. The prices to pay to play your own games online are going up and are more expensive than ever, and games aren't even guaranteed to run at 1080p 60 FPS, performance metrics that would have been acceptable with the Xbox One. Sony, it's time to stop. But then moving on to the Nintendo Switch 2, and I genuinely believe that this situation is worse than the PlayStation 5 Pro, because at the very least with the PS5 Pro, I genuinely believe that Sony were just dumb and they didn't know what they were doing when they charged the price for the thing. However, with Nintendo, this is so blatantly obvious a scam that it's insane. So Nintendo are charging you like $450 for the Nintendo Switch 2, and we know for a fact that the console is not worth this price and that you are being scammed. How do I know this? Well, it's been revealed that in Japan, the Nintendo Switch 2 is being charged for the equivalent of $350. But get this, the Nintendo Switch 2 is being region locked to Japan, meaning that you can't just buy a $350 Nintendo Switch 2 and then import it to your country and, change the language from Japanese to English or French or German or whatever other language you speak. No, if you live anywhere other than Japan and you want a Nintendo Switch 2, you have to spend $100 extra for the thing. Why? Because go fuck yourself, that's why. And the thing about all of this is that the Nintendo Switch 2 isn't even that special anymore. Like at the very least with the Nintendo Switch, back in 2017 there was a gap in the market for handheld gaming tech. However, now in 2025, you have things like the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally, which just completely blow the Nintendo Switch 2 out of the water. Sure, the Nintendo Switch 2 has impressive specs, and, it easily beats the Steam Deck in terms of specs, but that's basically the only incentive you have to buy the thing. And even then, if you've been paying attention to console gaming in the last 10 years or so, you will know that not every game runs at the advertised quality. 4K 60 FPS for docked mode and 1080p 120 FPS for handheld mode. I can guarantee you right now, games are not gonna run at that quality. Games didn't even run at that quality with the Nintendo Switch, 720p 30 FPS in handheld mode. Meanwhile, you had games like Hyrule Warriors which struggled to achieve 30 FPS. Not only are games gonna be $70 to $80, but you also have the Joy-Cons being like $80 as well, which is a fucking scam. Like, I remember a time not so long ago when like the Xbox One controllers were like $45 and the games were like $50 to $60. And now here we are where things have just gone up by such a ridiculous price. And I don't even want to hear the inflation argument, oh, these things are being more expensive and priced higher because of inflation. It's like, okay, then why the fuck aren't people's wages also going up? People's wages are being stagnant, games consoles and what have you are going up. This is a blatant scam. Especially since it's fucking video games. Like, it's not even, like, essential things to people's lives. But then you have the Xbox side of things with Microsoft, and this is where things have just reached rock bottom, in my opinion. Because at the very least, Xbox, up until this point, I felt had been relatively chill in comparison to the other two. Like, I was kind of expecting this to come around, but the fact that Xbox was, of all people, was the one to fuck it up was actually kinda hilarious and disappointing at the same time. First of all, we get news that games are gonna be $80 on the Xbox ecosystem, and I feel like the only reason they're doing this is, number one, because the other console manufacturers are doing it, and also number two, to boost Game Pass sales. But then we have this list, and this is an absolute gem, where basically everything in the Xbox ecosystem is going up in price. What's that? These consoles that are over 5 years old at this point? Oh, you expect them to go down in price? Oh, you silly Billy. So looking at this list, the Xbox Series S is worth $380 to $430 US, depending on whether you have 512 gigabytes or 1 terabyte in your console. The Xbox Series X is between $549 US or $600 US, depending on whether you get the digital or the disc drive. And the 2 terabyte Xbox Series X is $730. $730. You're pricing a console that has worse specs than the PlayStation 5 Pro at PlayStation 5 Pro prices. Like, it doesn't really matter to me that you have 2 terabytes in this specific version of the Xbox Series X. Like, I'm fairly certain everything else is the same. But then looking at controllers, it's even worse, because controllers for the Xbox is now 65, US minimum, which, if anything, just shines a giant spotlight on the Joy-Con situation, where the Joy-Cons are even more expensive than that. Headsets are at least $65, possibly more, and the Elite controllers are $150 US. Like, we've reached the point with console gaming where I'm genuinely convinced you could get a Nintendo Switch 1 for the price of a fucking game controller nowadays. And the funny thing about all of this is that Xbox, aside from PC gaming obviously, Xbox was the last man standing. Like, Sony and Nintendo had damaged their public reputation with these new pieces of hardware, and all Microsoft had to do was literally nothing. If Microsoft had kept the prices of everything in the Xbox ecosystem the same, I feel like Xbox would have just skyrocketed in popularity. Cheaper consoles than Sony and Nintendo for roughly the same quality, cheaper games for the same quality, cheaper prices to play your games online, and you also have Game Pass, which is a pretty good option for having a lot of games for the least amount of money. Like, if Xbox had done literally nothing in this situation, I feel like it would have become more popular. I'm not saying that it would have surpassed PlayStation or Nintendo Switch, like, that's not what I'm saying, but the point is that I feel like it would definitely have been nothing but positive in the public opinion's eyes if they had not done anything. If they were the only one of the 3 console manufacturers to not give in to this price bullshit. So I look you in the eyeballs, dear viewer, and ask you if you are on console gaming, why the fuck aren't you on PC at this point? Like, console gaming is in a terrible spot. The worst it's ever been, to such an extent that people genuinely think this is going to bring about the crash of the AAA gaming industry. Your future is more expensive than ever, and there is no guarantee that what you are paying for is going to be worth the money. So at this point, I feel like it would be better just getting a gaming PC for like $800 or $900 with a 4060 in it or something like that, and making your first step into PC gaming. Because at this point, you might as well. Like, the consoles are like $600, $700. Like, you may as well just pay that little bit extra and make this switch to PC gaming. Especially since with this platform, you don't have to worry about paying to play your own games online. You don't have to worry about corporate bullshit. You get things like emulators and mod support, cheaper games, and more games. And generally speaking, you will achieve the performance metrics that you want because we have graphics settings over here, meaning that you can get whatever desired graphics or desired frame rates you want from the game that you are playing. This situation is so fucking frustrating because for the longest time, I genuinely thought that console gaming had an appeal to it. But at this point, I'm genuinely struggling to find any appeal at all. You can't even make the argument that it's a budget option anymore because the prices are just going up and up and up, whereas the prices for PC gaming is either remaining the same or, in some instances, coming down. If there was a shred of hope left for the AAA gaming industry and the future of console gaming, Microsoft has snuffed it out. It's now apparent that all three console manufacturers are willing to take advantage of you. And as a result of this, you shouldn't respect them in return by giving them your money. I'm the Gaming Rift, I thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.